There you go. If you want to smoke cigarettes, go smoke cigarettes. But you notice they put on the side of every packet of cigarettes, caution. Cigarette smoking is bad for your health and may lead to an increased likelihood or rate of cancer. But if you want to smoke cigarettes, go smoke cigarettes. That's all we're saying. All we're saying is label the product, let the consumer know that the floor they just bought to put in their mom's house is in fact low traction. Low traction means you have a higher likelihood of a slip and fall event. The problem here, Sean, is there ain't going to be a lot of manufacturers willing to do this. That's why we're calling for it to be a government mandate. Sean, in the 27 years the NFSI has been around, not very few, I can't say none, but very few manufacturers have jumped on this bandwagon. You see, they don't really want the public to know. They don't want the public to know that a lot of the crap they make has very poor or low quality control. So you think the manufacturer of a floor cleaner wants to label the floor cleaner with low traction? Hey, hey, buy our stuff and make your floor slippery. It's like, why don't you put some, bacon fat on your floor?
It's too much chemical.
So the manufacturers don't want you to know, even though we know, because I just showed you the data, that 7 out of the 10 or 12 manufacturers of household floor cleaners, the majority of household floor cleaners make your floor slippery. But the manufacturers don't want you to know that.
Scary stuff.
Bad for business, Sean. All right, welcome back to Safety News. This is Russ Kensier here with my co-host, Sean Joseph.
What's up, Russ?
Looking very sporty today.
Thank you.
In the previous episode, we covered hard hats, helmets, and Joe Biden having a beer with Amy Klobuchar somewhere in Wisconsin, don't you know, drinking a brewski and having some fried cheese. And the world seemed to just rain down on Joe Biden because, my God, he wore a hard hat backwards. But part of what we talked about was slips and falls, if you recall. I assume you recall.
I do.
And so falls are a big, big problem. Slips and falls cost a lot of money, very, very expensive. And we have a series on Safety News, which is growing in popularity, called Safety Matters. Have you seen the episode, Sean? Please say yes.
I have.
Have you? You have any favorites?
Safety Matters?
Yeah.
Ooh. So just...
Falls aren't funny.
Oh, falls aren't funny.
Falls aren't funny. Remember?
Yeah. So there's some interesting clips of people, unfortunately, just taking like devastating falls and turns, and these are just regular day people in events.
Well, you want to see some? I got some clips.
Let's
I want to kind of show the folks at home exactly what we're talking about. We have the Falls Aren't Funny campaign. We have hundreds of videos that are going to be uploaded to the site, and they're all going to be kind of the same genre. But I want you to see if you can connect any dots here between these three videos. I think I'm going to show you three. Okay.
Sure.
So here's the first one. And you saw what happened. She comes in, she's sunny day, steps off the floor mat, and steps on the floor, and down she goes. So, here's the question. Basically, these are all surveillance videos that I've acquired through my work as an expert witness. So this is all surveillance that's taken by a defendant in a slip and fall lawsuit. Okay. So it's always the same thing. Show somebody walking at a normal pace, not doing anything crazy, and then boom, down they go. And here comes the finger pointing, right? Whose fault was it? Mm-hmm. They're going to argue, the property owner, that it was her shoes. She's wearing these slippery shoes. She's going to argue that it was a slippery floor. And maybe there is some spill on the floor or some kind of contaminant. Maybe they mopped the floor moments before this video started, and you didn't know it. And so it always comes down to what I call the blame game. Somebody's got to get blamed for what happened.
Right.
And so that's just a good example of a typical surveillance video of somebody coming in and getting hurt. She was a young woman. She was not an older person. But these types of videos go on. I'm going to show you another one if you don't mind, Sean.
So, yeah.
You see what happened. Flip-flops. Her argument was that was a lawsuit that wound up getting settled, and her argument was the tile was slippery. This is a store in Florida, and it was a tiled floor that was wet, and it rains in Florida quite a bit, and so water's blowing in to the vestibule. She's walking out. If you notice, there was one floor mat, not a second one, closer to the exit. And she took that step off of a floor mat, just like the lady in the first video. They take that step off of the floor mat, onto the floor, and down they go. And so the argument was, well, this particular floor was slippery when wet. And so it becomes a floor problem, floor issue. They, of course, like to blame the victim, saying it was her fault. And I always get a kick out of that because this is a big box retail store. And the defense from the big box retailer store is, well, you were leaving our store on a rainy day and you slipped and fell, and it must have been the flip-flops. Your flip-flops were dangerous. You were wearing dangerous footwear. And I sit there and go, dangerous footwear. Flip-flops. Well, she bought them from you. And you didn't put a warning sticker tag on those dangerous shoes saying be careful when you wear these dangerous shoes, or maybe be careful when you wear those dangerous shoes that we sold you in our store. So which is it? Did you sell this woman dangerous shoes that resulted in her injury? If so, you need to label them, right? Test and label them. Or was it, in fact, a combination of the dangerous shoes that you sold her and the dangerous floor that was in your store? Okay, you got to kind of weigh it out here. Which is it? Yeah. I mean, what's the answer? So it always kind of comes down to the same thing. One person blames the premises, the floor, the condition of the floor, some type of hazard that was on the floor, and there's a responsibility from property owners, business owners, to ensure that their floors are safe at all times. And the defendant always will say things like, well, you didn't really know it was wet. You didn't see it was wet, or how do you know it was wet? It must have been your shoes. You were preoccupied. You were on your cell phone, whatever. And it just keeps going and going and going. And that's kind of, again, a typical scenario of the Falls Aren't Funny campaign. I got one more.
Sure.
Ready for one more?
Absolutely.
And so you say, was it the shoes? Was it the floor that was wet from mopping? Or maybe it was what they were mopping the floor with, like a floor cleaner, like soap, whatever the chemical was.
This is a bad one. His buckled and everything.
So he's just walking. This is in an office complex, and down he went. Pretty painful, huh?
Yeah.
And so it always, again, comes down to the variables. The unknowns. Well, what was the slip resistance of the floor when wet? Did the floor cleaning product leave some type of a film, a residue, a lubricant? And, just how slip resistant are the shoes people wear? And well, the truth is we don't really know any of this stuff because none of the manufacturers of those products do any testing or labeling.
That's
you have no idea
what
you're buying. You really don't know what you're buying. It's the wild, wild west. So it's called the blame game. Manufacturers of floors say it's not our product. Our products are safe. Well, look, the guy was mopping. It was clearly the janitor's fault. The janitor goes, well, yeah, I was mopping, and there was a warning sign out. I had a warning sign. Didn't you see the warning sign saying the floor was wet? And then, of course, they turn around and blame the person who fell for their shoes. And so if you look at the statistics, it's a kind of a grim note here. But there's something called the slip and fall safety pyramid. And it's kind of 3 layers. The very top layer are people who die. For every slip and fall fatality, 23 people will fall and report an injury. Those are called claims. Mm-hmm. But 70 people, Sean, will fall and it will go unreported. Jeez. In other words, you'll never know. So most people, when they experience a slip and fall or trip and fall, they just kind of get up and leave. You don't know about it. Yeah. But for everyone who dies, and there's quite a few who die, yeah. I got a case today that a woman tripped over a gasoline island, at a gas station, mm-hmm. fell forward, and when she landed, her neck hit the back end of a car, and it broke her neck. Pretty gruesome. Oh. But the safety pyramid, as we call it here, is kind of widely used within the safety industry that kind of compares numbers. And so, by the grace of God, the 23 people who got injured didn't die. Mm-hmm. And by the grace of God, the 70 people who fell and went unreported didn't get seriously injured as to report the incident. And so, the safety pyramid also plays an important role with understanding how and why people slip and fall. And I should show you some videos. So there's a graph that's widely used, published by the National Floor Safety Institute, called Causes of Slips and Falls. And no surprise, Sean, half of all slips and falls are directly caused by the floor. Makes sense. The flooring material and or the cleaning procedures, the products that are used to clean floors. Floors represent half of all slip and fall injuries. It's the single biggest piece of the pie. But coming up right behind it is footwear. Okay. 24% of slip and fall and trip and falls. But for this discussion, 24% of slips and falls are due to the person's shoes making some or having some contribution to traction. The remaining 3 components are fraud, hazard identification, otherwise known as wet floor signs, and improper training of workers. And so when you look at causation and some of the numbers, and I'm just dumbing down this presentation so our viewers can understand it, it just comes down to a very, very simple answer. And the answer is, number 1, test the slip resistance of floors to understand exactly what their traction level is. Now that sounds like a clever idea, but most manufacturers of floors, if not, when I say most, well over 80% of the manufacturers of all floors, wood, vinyl, ceramic, you name it, don't test.
I was going to say.
Don't test.
How do they do?
They don't even have a test method.
Okay.
And when the National Floor Safety Institute standards came along, they opposed them. They still oppose them. They don't want to test. And the reason they don't want to test is they don't want to go on the record for having tested, because once they test their products, then they have to label them, right? Mm-hmm. They got to tell the consumer just how shitty they are. And so what they do is they play this game is, don't test, don't say anything, don't ask, don't tell. Somebody gets hurt, play dumb, shrug your shoulders, pass it on to the attorneys. Thank God that's why we have insurance. And the hell with people getting hurt. They don't care. Just don't care.
So it is fair to say then, to folks learning about this, there's probably vested interest in a lot of companies not getting into a deeper level of understanding about this.
Yeah, exactly. And a good example of that is how today the means by which floors can be tested, not only in the real world, but like in a laboratory if you're a manufacturer, is so super easy. In fact, I'm going to show you one of the most popular testing devices. It's called the TrackScan 2.0. Check this thing out, Sean. It's a little yellow box. You push a button. It walks across the floor all by itself. You don't have to have an engineering degree to use it. This is measuring what's known as the static coefficient of friction.
No way.
Yep. And you'll see as it's jotting right along, it's telling you what the static friction is. But check this out. It gives you a little gas gauge. Wow. Low, moderate, high traction. So, right off the bat, if you wanted to test the floors in your particular business, like we saw 3 videos, This is how simple it is. This is now going to measure dynamic coefficient of friction, a different form of friction. Same thing, and you get the gas gauge. So it's moderate traction for D-cough, high traction for S-cough. It gives you a little paper printout, and looky there. So you ask yourself, why is it that manufacturers of floors and property owners and insurance companies and everybody else that has a vested interest in reducing claims, the federal government, reducing injuries, knowing how big the problem is,
absolutely,
why don't they do this? It's simple, it's effective, it's scientific.
Yeah.
Why not, Sean?
There has to, yeah, that's a great question. And I would wonder, what they're afraid of essentially, because as you've shed light into video footage of people falling, the numbers, the causes, as well as very straightforward solutions like we just saw, this doesn't have to happen. And companies dedicating time, money, effort, and resources towards solving this, it saves them tons of money, right? It allows the companies to operate better for their patrons with less risk.
Yeah.
Everyone has to walk around.
Win-win.
And people don't have to get hurt.
Right. People don't have to get hurt. That's the best way to word it. People don't have to get hurt, but they are, and they're getting hurt in mass numbers.
Absolutely. Those are tough videos to watch.
The number one safety crisis in the United States today is slips, trips, and falls. 8 million people will seek emergency room treatment this year for a fall. 36,000 will die. And
Jeez.
Most of those people are the elderly. So the total cost is estimated to be about $150 billion a year.
So
nobody seems to be connected. Nobody seems to be wired to do anything.
As soon as you play that forward, my first question is, and I'm not meaning to make this a comparison, although it will be what I'm doing. If that's the case, why so much discussion over something like COVID, but not a fraction of attention or time spent on talking about slip?
Good question. Nobody talks about slips, trips, and falls other than in the context of tonight at 10, you see on television, on the news, tonight at 10, woman caught on video pouring water on the floor. You saw the graph. That represents at best 10%.
Mm-hmm.
That's fraud, 10%. 90% is legit. Don't talk about it. Just ignore it. We're going to talk about Joe Biden's helmet. That's a crisis.
Right.
But the reality is priorities. Mm-hmm. And manufacturers of floors don't want to test because they don't want liability. The insurance industry is very cautious to do any testing or mandate testing of their policyholders, again, for liability reasons. Everybody's afraid of the lawyers, right? Because when the lawyers come along, holy cow, everything changes. So they run away from it. But you know what the cost is? The cost is human lives. The cost is real people getting hurt, many of which die, debilitating injuries that, the number one, you probably didn't know this, Sean, the number one reason for nursing home admissions is because of a fall.
Holy moly.
Number one. Most people that are admitted to a nursing home today got there because they fell at home. You know what? Most old people will tell you they're deathly afraid of falling. They know somebody that fell. Their husband may have fallen and broke a hip. Never was the same. Died within 6 months. Their neighbor, their siblings. So everybody's got a story. But nobody's taking real corrective action except for the National Floor Safety Institute, the NFSI, the group I founded back 27 years ago when you were just a little pumpkin. But the truth is, manufacturers of floors don't give a damn. You know who else doesn't give a damn? These guys. Floor cleaner manufacturers. Look at the study that was done back in 2005. We did a study where we actually took these various household floor cleaners, applied them to a brand new floor, meaning the floor was never walked on. And we just basically cleaned a new floor. And we wanted to see, do these chemicals, do these cleaning products leave a film that you can actually measure to see if they made the floor more or less slippery. Now, these floors weren't dirty. So look what we found. Lysol, Pledge, Pine Sol, Spick and Span, go all the way down to the bottom, Murphy's Oil Soap. You mop your floor with Murphy's Oil Soap, and you will reduce its slip resistance by more than 50%. More than half. And so manufacturers of floor cleaners Well, they don't give a damn either. They're producing products that are making floors slippery. The more you mop your floor, the more dangerous it becomes.
As I say, just so everyone and myself understands that, people are using these products to clean to make them safer, but in reality, it's doing the opposite.
Right. And the consumer doesn't know that.
Oh.
Well, think about it, Sean. When you go home and the floor has been mopped, cleaned, how do you know? What are the things they're called? They're called organoleptic senses. Organoleptic. These are the senses you use. So you walk in the house. The floor has been mopped. How do you know it's been mopped? Number one,
scent.
You smell it.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Think about it. Lemon, lime,
Mm-hmm.
whatever the fragrance is. You sit there and go, how is it that I can smell that the floor was mopped? Because what they're mopping it with was, perfume. Oil. That's where you get fragrances from, right? Oils. So you actually have, as you walk into your house, your first sense is, I smell that the floor has been cleaned. So that basically means they put something on the floor that's giving off a fragrance, because that's what you're smelling.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, what do you think it is? That people judge the cleanliness of their floors by.
It's kind of silly, but I would say like the shininess.
There you go, buddy.
Yeah. Jim?
Yep, you got it. Yeah, gloss. And when you put oil on your floor, perfume is made of oil, guess what happens? It gets shiny. Mm-hmm. So what happens is you make your floors more slippery. So we reproduced at the NFSI back last year the same household floor cleaner study, and check this one out. The blue lines indicate what the product's performance was before the cleaning procedure, and the red lines were after. So you go all the way along the list from left to right, and you see that every product, there's a few exceptions, once the product was applied to a particular tile or floor, the slip resistance went down.
Wow.
Across the board. Not all, some more than others, but generally speaking, when you mop your floor with any of these household floor cleaners, these are products that are used every day by most Americans all the time. I don't know how often you mop your floor, but say you're mopping the floor once a week.
Right.
Look what you're doing to your floor, Sean.
Unbelievable.
Look what you're doing.
This is crazy.
So you sit there and go, well, what can be done? Yeah. And again, the solution is the same. Mm-hmm. Test the slip resistance of floor cleaners.
Yeah.
For their traction level. I mean, is that crazy talk?
No.
I mean, test how slippery. I'm speaking to manufacturers.
Right.
Test your products to a national standard, NFSI, using a highly advanced robotic testing device, which NFSI has approved 5 of them. Take your pick. We don't care which one. And identify how slippery the products you're manufacturing are and label them so the consumer knows. I'm buying a floor that's moderate traction, maybe low traction. Okay? I need to know what the risk is. Why? Because it's my life, my health, my parents.
Absolutely. That's what I think about the most. And that's why, honestly, I get a little emotional talking about this stuff. Like, my parents are at that age. Whenever I see them doing certain activities, I get a little bit nervous because I just know they're one trip fall away from being immobilized.
Just think about what you said. They're one slip and fall, trip and fall away from either death,
yes,
or serious bodily injury where they will never recover. They'll never be the same. Head injuries. We talked about head injuries in a previous episode.
The other day, my dad wanted to go up in the attic. And my dad is about 70 years old, and it's just the whole concept of him trying to climb upstairs to the attic. He's done it many times, but like there's something now mentally I just can't do it. And so we actually got into a fight about it because he just, get it done, the generation. But I'm processing this stuff, what we're talking about here, which is if he just takes one miscue,
right,
his life changes.
That's a good example because the risk associated with falling going into the attic is probably something that would be on his mind as well as yours. But imagine his chances of falling, not in the attic, but by simply walking across the kitchen floor is actually greater. The risk of your father getting injured as a result of slipping and falling on his kitchen floor is greater than him falling in the attic, statistically.
That's scary. That's scary.
That's the world we live in.
Yeah.
What else do we have to look at? We covered floors, floor cleaners. What's the third component?
Footwear.
There you go. Shoes. So in one of my books, I've written several of them, I talk about the various types of soles on shoes. And soles of shoes come in all different types. You have flip-flops that have no sole pattern. Then you have what are called slip-resistant shoes, which have this type of characteristic, flat arches, flat heels, generally rubber compounds. It has this type of a pattern on the shoe. But would it surprise you to know, Sean, that manufacturers of shoes, they don't test either and label?
Seriously?
The term slip resistant, when you read that on the bottom of a shoe, you know what that means?
No.
No, neither does anybody else. It's a made-up term. It's a marketing term.
This is unbelievable.
There's no test method for shoe slip resistance until, of course, NFSI came along.
Wow.
So NFSI comes along, starts writing standards. You know who we piss off? Makers, manufacturers. Oh, we can't have this guy coming up with technology and science to actually evaluate the performance, safety performance of our products. So manufacturers have openly and vehemently opposed everything related to testing and labeling of products, even though their customers have a greater risk of a serious injury as a direct impact of their product's failure, their product's lack of safety. So you have the manufacturers of floors, floor cleaners, and shoes, all opposing standards. None of them test to a nationally recognized standard that has a label. And so you have no idea. So when you go to the market and you're buying shoes, you have no idea what you're buying. When you're buying floor cleaners, you probably did not know, Sean, that the floor cleaners that you're using are making your floor slippery, did you?
Never would have guessed. Never would have guessed. Like, the last thing that would have crossed my mind is I clean the floor, it becomes unsafer.
Correct. Good analogy. Good way to sum it up. The more you mop your floor, the more dangerous it becomes. That's fact. And 2 independent studies over a 10-year period prove that. So manufacturers don't test, they don't label. The consumer has to bear the brunt of all of this by way of injuries. And again, the answer for footwear is what? Test the slip resistance of shoe soles and label their level of traction. So the prescription, the remedy I'm giving you is simple. And by the way, here's what the shoe tester looks like. It's a robotic device. Highly sophisticated. It measures the angle. You put different types of shoes on different types of surfaces under different types of contamination. This is a work shoe. This is the kind of shoe that would be worn in the fast food environment where quarry tile floors are the most common. So you rank the performance of the shoe on its anticipated related floor, and you come up with high, moderate, or low traction.
So I have a question for you. So
That's
this is
the plan.
This is fascinating stuff. Seeing this all come together and just my awareness to it. Like, thank you for putting this together. Realizing how big of a problem this is. Seeing some of that footage. Like, folks, these aren't, just a casual trip. I mean, people are falling right on their back. Their knees are buckling. They're falling on their sides. Like, limbs can be broken. Lives can be changed in the matter of an instant. And no one seems to be really taking any accountability. That's only level 1 of the problem. Then it continues to happen, and people who can invest in the change don't seem to be doing it.
See, they don't know. The average consumer is wrapped up with Dancing with the Stars, America's Got Talent, Joe Biden wears his hat on backwards, just meaningless bullshit. Our media has totally confused the hell out of everyone, brainwashed them to make everything entertaining. The news is boring. And so let's make it entertaining.
Yeah.
Let's tweak it. Let's twist it. Let's make boring news, sexy, entertaining. Meanwhile, in the world we live in, safety news, the world's a very different place. As I mentioned a moment ago, not a lot of people are doing anything, but one organization is, and it's a big frickin' deal. And it's important for our audience to know this. The National Floor Safety Institute, Sean Joseph, just released its petition to the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission, CPSC, mandating slip resistance, traction testing, and labeling of products. The NFSI has petitioned the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission to initiate rulemaking to mandate, to force manufacturers to test and label their product slip resistance, or what's called traction, of commercial and residential grade floor coverings, floor coatings and treatments, residential and commercial floor cleaning agents, and all consumer footwear. The label would inform consumers what the traction levels are for the products they are considering purchasing. And this is my quote. It's important that the consumer know what they're buying.
Mm-hmm.
Look, Sean, it's no different than food product labeling.
Absolutely, yeah.
The nutrition label on potato chips, candy bars, and even bottles of water.
Right.
And so the National Floor Safety Institute has submitted its petition to the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission. It's the third time we've done this. The two previous times, petitions were rejected by a single vote.
Yeah.
We think it's going to be different this time. Why? Because the Consumer Product Safety Commissioners voted 3-1 to advance this to the rulemaking stage as far as the call for public comments. So it's not at the rulemaking stage yet. It's at a stage where the public, you and our audience, and we're going to give you the website, can actually go to the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission's website and submit a comment saying, yeah, that seems reasonable to protect my dad, my mom, protect myself.
Yeah.
That manufacturers test and label. I want to know, I have a right to know just how slippery this crap is.
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm putting your damn tile in my kitchen, or I bought Mama a kitchen floor, updated her house. She did some renovation, only to find her breaking her hip, being in a nursing home, and dying within a year. And the damn manufacturers sit around and pretend like, well, it's not our fault. The same thing with the manufacturers of floor cleaning products and footwear. They all have a responsibility to step up to the plate, and make a difference. I mean, this goes on. If the petition is approved, Sean, consumers would have the ability to know just how slippery a particular type of floor, shoe, or floor cleaning product is prior to buying it.
Boom.
Boom. That's the goal. Educate the consumer by way of a product label. And let me show you how confusing this label is, Sean. That's what we're talking about. You will go to the marketplace, and if you're buying floors, shoes, or floor cleaners, this label would be actually on the product. It will tell you, is this particular floor cleaning product, or shoe sole high, moderate, or low traction? Real simple. If you want to buy low traction surfaces or shoes, have at it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
I think that'll put a dent in that 7% trading issue too.
There you go. If you want to smoke cigarettes, go smoke cigarettes. But you notice they put on the side of every packet of cigarettes, caution. Cigarette smoking is bad for your health and may lead to an increased likelihood or rate of cancer. But if you want to smoke cigarettes, go smoke cigarettes. That's all we're saying. All we're saying is label the product, let the consumer know that the floor they just bought to put in their mom's house is in fact low traction. Low traction means you have a higher likelihood of a slip and fall event. The problem here, Sean, is there ain't going to be a lot of manufacturers willing to do this. That's why we're calling for it to be a government mandate. Sean, in the 27 years the NFSI has been around, not very few, I can't say none, but very few manufacturers have jumped on this bandwagon. You see, they don't really want the public to know. They don't want the public to know that a lot of the crap they make has very poor or low quality control. So you think the manufacturer of a floor cleaner wants to label the floor cleaner with low traction? Hey, buy our stuff and make your floor slippery. It's like, why don't you put some, bacon fat on your floor?
It's too much calories.
So the manufacturers don't want you to know, even though we know, because I just showed you the data, that 7 out of the 10 or 12 manufacturers of household floor cleaners, the majority of household floor cleaners make your floor slippery. But the manufacturers don't want you to know that.
Scary stuff.
Bad for business, Sean. Bad for business. So I mentioned a moment ago, here's the website. If you would like to chime in on this, to stand up and take a concrete effort to support the National Floor Safety Institute's petition, you can do so by going to our website, safetymattershow.com, or the National Floor Safety Institute's website at nfsi.org. This is a way that consumers, from the comfort of their home and just a few clicks away, Sean, can make a difference. Absolutely. You can go online and say, we support this petition mandating that manufacturers do something more to inform the general public about matters of safety that, affect all of us.
Absolutely.
Affect every single one of us. And so this being the segue from the previous episode about Joe Biden's helmet on backwards, and how OSHA helmets are now being designed to provide safety from head injuries as a result of a slip and fall in the workplace. Obviously, your parents, Sean, are not walking around the house wearing hard hats.
Not yet. But now I know my hard hats.
Not yet. But, this whole thing is really out of control. And it's about time that we start to take concrete action to turn the tide. So
it is.
Just a trivia question. What year was OSHA introduced? How old is OSHA?
I'm going to say 1975.
1975. Well, you're close, but you are wrong. 1970.
Ooh. Yeah.
1970, which is right around the year, I forgot the exact year, that the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission was founded. And who founded it? Who was the genesis between who helped develop the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission? What was his name? Friend of the shows. I've been on his show.
Nader.
He's been on my show. Who is he?
Ralph?
There you go.
The Ralph Nader?
The Ralph Nader. So one of my role models and icons. But long story short, before we wrap this episode up, everyone go to the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission website and get there from the Safety Matters Show or NFSI.org and voice your opinion. It's your country, and you have a right to know that the products that you're purchasing to put in your home that jeopardizes the safety of your family, you have a right to know just exactly what it is you're buying. And although manufacturers don't like it, you know what, Sean? We still live in a free country. Mm-hmm. This is still a free country, and in my view, as a guy that's invested the vast majority of his career in protecting people from unnecessary harm, the time has come. And I'm doing my part. I'm just asking everybody on the other end of this camera to do their part.
Cheers. So. Yeah, please, folks, do what you can to learn more about it, participate in the website, and let's bring more awareness to this.
Well, with that, Sean, that brings another episode of Safety News to a close. And so on behalf of myself and Sean Joseph, who did not know what OSHA meant, but it's okay. Not many people do. It's just yet another acronym. But with that in mind, thanks for joining us, and we will see you guys next week.
Bye, everyone.